So you want to group with a friend on the opposite faction? Is it actually possible? Well, so far there's no 100% way to do it. However, there are a bunch of things you can do to greatly increase the chances. So, as you know, in DC Universe Online there are heroes and there are villains. But there's no current way to actually group together and then go into an alert or raid. However, there are some things you could do to kind of queue up or increase the chances of queuing up together with friends on the opposite side. So, first of all, there is the algorithm with the lists here. So concentrating mostly on the friends list because that's the positive algorithm. Obviously, the ignore list is the opposite of that. But if you're trying to matchmake with someone on the opposite side, you should add them to your friends list, and that goes for the other side as well. They should add you back to increase that chance. That was mentioned as part of an algorithm for queuing, or not queuing, but teleporting to the same phase as a friend. It was definitely used in phasing, like when they first talked about that in an old like FNL. Phasing deals with, or it factors in the friends list and the ignore list, and that's also the case for queuing. So you're more likely to be in phase with a friend, although it's kind of like a weak factor because there are not that many phases. So like if you had like a huge ignore list or a huge friends list, it's almost going to get diluted. But for queuing, obviously you're not going to get anyone on the ignore, but it'll increase the chance if someone is on your friends list. Okay, the next thing is if you go into gameplay settings, there's the role optional alerts. If you have role option on, it's completely loose. It makes everything optional, so you could queue with any roles for the 4 players, and this only applies to alerts. So if you want to tighten it up, what you would do is turn that off. So that means it requires the 4 roles. So that means the group on one side has to have 2 roles, and the group on the other side has to have the other 2 roles. Now you could select your support role and DPS at the same time, but as long as the 4 roles are present on queuing, it's going to increase the chances of you guys getting matched up. Now where that would decrease is if you happen to have the 3 support roles on one side and the opposite side is 1 DPS trying to queue up. Chances are you're going to miss, there's a higher chance you're going to miss them. Because anytime it is a single on one side, it's going to lower the chances because more people are going to queue up single to pug. And also DPS is the most common role, so if you had that person alone, it's going to lower the chances. So again, none of these work 100%, but the more of these you do, the higher the chances you're going to get matched up. The other obvious thing is the group size. So this applies more to raids because raids have more number combinations that you could end up doing, like with you and your friends on the opposite side. You might have 6 on one side and then 2 on another. You could have a 5 and a 3. The lowest chance is obviously 7 and 1. You could have a 4 and 4. But yeah, I would say if you had anything that isn't like one person on one side, it would increase the chances. So it's kind of like piecing it together like a puzzle. Obviously, with a duo, you only have 1 and 1. The alert 2 and 2 will more likely match than 3 and 1. But that together with the roll option off would probably help out in the alert. The last thing you could do, and I think most people don't know about this one, is also in settings and gameplay. There's a switch called Enable Suicide Squad. It's called Suicide Squad on the villain side. On the hero side, it's Task Force X. But what you want to do here is one side needs to turn it off and one side needs to turn it on. Now the reason for that is if you both have it off, that's a 0% chance you're going to get matched up. Because the hero side would get locked onto the hero instance and the villain side would get locked onto the villain instance. So that cancels out like all of the other things I mentioned before. If you both have it off, it just simply wouldn't work. Now if you both had it on, you could end up like crisscrossing and missing each other. Like the hero group would have a chance of slipping into the villain instance, and the villain group would have a chance of slipping into a hero instance. In that case, you would not get it. So the highest chance is if one side locks their faction and the other side crosses over. So for example, if the hero side had it off, it would lock in the hero instance. So there's 0% chance the hero group would cross over to the villain instance. But on the villain side, you'd want to turn it on because it would allow that crossover. So that one group is allowed to cross over and one is locked in. Well, even that's not 100%, but that's probably the strongest factor out of all of them because you're eliminating like a large percent of the failures. So yeah, those are basically the 4 things. There's the lists, the roll option, each of the group sizes matching up, and then there's the Suicide Squad / Task Force X. So yeah, the more of those you're able to fulfill, the higher the chance. Now, I guess the rest of the video I'll talk about what they could possibly do, because I have an idea that pulls together some facts we know. So we do know that once a Suicide Squad successfully goes through, this is like with or without your friends. Once you're in the instance with the other faction, you notice that the names are all blue. So it is doing some sort of faction flip in between, like when you queue up and then when the instance starts. And the other evidence that we know that there's a faction flip, or there's some kind of conversion or temporary conversion, is a few years ago there was actually a bug where they flipped it and then like failed to flip it back when they exited, and it was happening with operations. So those are instances that have multiple locations. It's programmatically different than an instance that has one location. But it was the operations that were not like converting the other side back. So the way it worked was like you would enter the operation, it did the conversion to one side, and then depending on what it converted you to, if you completed that instance and you exited the portal, you could have ended up in the wrong safe house. And I think it converted the faction back after you got out, but you would be in the wrong safe house. And we noticed that because like if you were on the hero side, you would notice characters For example, in the Watchtower, you would notice characters with the purple name, which under normal conditions that wouldn't happen. So with that bug, it gave evidence that there was some kind of faction flip on the inside. So keeping that in mind, the idea I had in mind was that there would be an option to attempt to queue with friends, or, well, actually, if it worked, it wouldn't be an attempt, it would actually be queue with friends. But instead of entering the instance first, it would put you into like some neutral sub-instance or something before the instance, where it does the conversion, and then with the conversion, it would allow you to actually invite your friends to group who are on the opposite side. And then once that grouping completes, then you enter the instance. So when you first queue to this neutral ground, you wouldn't be grouped yet. You wouldn't be fully grouped yet. You would just get whoever you had, and then you would enter, say some neutral instance. Let's just say Oblivion Bar. And then this Oblivion Bar would be a lot of people. It would be more than like 8 people. It would be whoever chose that option. And so once you're in that neutral room, you find your friends, and then you group with them, and then enter the instance that you originally queued for. I mean, I don't know how much of that's technically possible. It could be really complex, because you're basically entering an instance, then entering another instance. There's no evidence so far that that actually works, because there's nothing in the game that does that. I mean, the closest thing so far is the House of Legends, but that doesn't do the faction flip. I guess going into an instance and then entering another instance, I don't know, maybe it has similarities to an operation. But yeah, I don't know, this is just me brainstorming. But yep, that's all I have for you in this video. Thanks for